Guys, thank you so much for coming. This is the second meetup for Online Marketing Dublin. So we're really happy to see so much interest, so many people here. We started this meetup this year, and the goal was really simple. We think that there is a huge marketing community here in Dublin, and we want to create a really big platform so that everybody can network, get to know one another, share stories, share problems, rant a little bit. And so that's really the focus of the group. We're going to be doing them a bit more consistently from now on. But tonight we're really looking forward to hearing from Keith Browning from LinkedIn. Keith leads the brand team on a global scale for 2 of LinkedIn's business units. So we're looking forward to hearing what he has to say. Thanks so much, Keith. Can we give him a round of applause?
So I want to start off with a quick story which takes place in Stockholm 2 years ago. So it's about April in 2016, and we're in Stockholm in this venue. No, actually didn't look too dissimilar to the venue that we're in now. 200 sales and marketing leaders packed in. And backstage I'm kind of doing these power poses, and I'm kind of clapping my hands to get my energy level up because I'm about to go out and give my first presentation for LinkedIn. But it wasn't planned. So I was actually supposed to run the event, and the night before the speaker got sick and cancelled on us. And because I had kind of been the one to take him through the content and stuff like that, I was the only one who knew it. So I had to go on stage and deliver the presentation. So obviously it wasn't optimal kind of circumstances, but I'd say it went relatively well until about 5 minutes before the end. Kind of a hand went up in the front row, and a lady had a question, so I asked her name, and she said, "My name is Journal." And I just kind of said, "Oh, that's an unusual name, you don't hear that every day." To which she replied, completely deadpan, "Actually, I do." And the whole crowd just kind of burst out laughing. I was watching my clock kind of tick down, and I never got to finish my presentation. So hopefully tonight I'll get to finish my presentation. That's me on stage 2 years ago in Stockholm. Similar enough room, I would say. So I guess a little bit more about me, just to give you a sense of who I am, but also just a couple of hidden kind of LinkedIn lessons in here as well. The photo here on your left-hand side is me at a TV show called 8 out of 10 Cats. Does anybody know that TV show? So it's one of my favourite TV shows. But I was in London a couple of years ago, and I knew just down the road from where I was staying that they were about to film this show. So it was going to be filmed in the BBC studios on a Thursday night. And I was like, God, I'd love to go to that. So I was like, oh, I wonder, can I use LinkedIn here? So I found out who the production company were, went onto LinkedIn, put in the company name, and I didn't have any connections that worked there, but I did have a second degree connection. In other words, I knew somebody who the producer also knew. So I just reached out to that guy with a mail. I kind of said, do you happen to know this guy well? Do you think, any chance you could hook us up with a ticket there? Long story short, 2 nights later, I'm sitting in the audience for one of my favorite TV shows. Second photo is a lady called Lindsay Browning, who happens to be my second cousin. The only problem is I didn't know she existed until I started in LinkedIn. So I started, like I said, 3 years ago, and I started connecting with all these people that work in LinkedIn as well. And all of a sudden, this name kept surfacing up. It was like, oh, you should connect with Lindsay. And I was like, I noticed a surname, so I was kind of saying, what's this all about? So I connected with her, and then messaged her. I was like, I see you have the same surname as me. By the way, she works in New York in LinkedIn. So we started messaging back and forth, and yeah, long story short, it turns out that we're second cousins. When I tell that joke, not in Ireland, I swear to God, people are rolling around the floor. They're kind of going, oh, yeah. So all Irish people are related, basically. The third photo then is me actually speaking at a conference a couple of years ago, but how I got the gig was I had written a blog post on LinkedIn. So you might know that a couple of years ago we introduced this blogging platform or publishing platform where you can publish your own content. So I had written something on the topic of social selling. The organizer of a conference kind of saw it and reached out, and kind of I got the gig speaking. And then the final photograph, I have a younger brother called Carl. That's him there. He left school recently, or left college, I should say. And he did, what most people do when they leave college. He wrote up a CV. He started sending it out to all these different
kind of employers, and wasn't really hearing anything back. So I said, okay, I should sit down with him. Let's get you a LinkedIn profile, kind of thing. And we got him a profile, and not only actually did that kind of work out well, a recruiter reached out to him a few days after he put his profile live, and he got the job. So that's a little bit more about me, and also 4 hidden lessons or not so hidden lessons in terms of some of the ways that you can use LinkedIn. So tonight I'm going to talk about our brand strategy globally. So I lead the global brand team from Dublin, which is quite unusual. Most of the team are based in San Francisco, but not only is kind of the team relatively new, but the whole idea of doing brand marketing at a B2B level is really new in LinkedIn as well. So that's what I'm going to kind of talk through tonight, is the last 18 months, the journey we've been on. I've kind of split it into 3 sections, given the time that I have. I thought about how best to do it, whether to just show you a load of campaigns that we've done, or to just talk about the strategy, or what way to kind of divvy it up. So I've basically, the first section, I'm going to talk about the context or some of the reasons that we decided to kind of start on this journey, and talk to you a little bit about our strategy. Second part, I'm going to talk through a campaign. So a campaign that started a year ago and is still live today. And then I'll show you a second campaign. I won't go into as much detail, but just to give you a sense of how we come at kind of campaigns from different angles. So that's basically what we're going to talk through over the next half an hour. I'll give you a quick introduction to LinkedIn. I'm sure most of you know it. Many people here have a profile, by the way. Okay, so my job is actually done. I can leave now, I think. So you probably know most of this information, but what's the difference between LinkedIn and companies like Facebook or Twitter? Professional, absolutely. So we run the world's largest professional network, and the key word there being professional. So that's talks to your mindset more than anything else. You're in a professional mindset when you're on LinkedIn. You're looking at updates from brands. You're maybe connecting with your network. You're getting updates from influencers, all that kind of thing, versus what you would be doing on Facebook, which is more, you're looking at your friends' photographs or updates or whatever it is. We've 575 million members across the world. You see here how that breaks down. Amazingly now, in the past couple of years, EMEA, so Europe, Middle East and Africa, has overtaken North America there, as you can see. So EMEA is on about 180 million, and NAMER, I think, was about 145. If you zoom in further into Ireland, we've about 1 million active members. So active being, they've been on LinkedIn in the last month at least. In terms of the value proposition, again, I'm sure you kind of have a sense of what that is, but it's really about, first of all, building a professional brand. So you already have a professional brand, whether you like it or not. So, are you going to manage it or not is the question. It's about, building and growing out your network, and it's about finding a job. And if you already have a job, about finding your dream job. So that's kind of the value proposition for LinkedIn as a free member. Probably the question I get asked more often than not when I tell people I work in LinkedIn is, how do you make your money? So, is it all those premium emails that I get every day? No is the answer for the most part. How we make our money is through 4 business lines. So we've got LinkedIn Sales Solutions, LinkedIn Marketing Solutions, LinkedIn Talent Solutions, and LinkedIn Learning Solutions. So 4 business units within LinkedIn, and they help you to do those 4 things. So to hire, market, sell, and learn. My role specifically is I'm head of brand for 2 of those business lines, which is the marketing, the market and the sale. So LinkedIn Marketing Solutions and LinkedIn Sales Solutions. And tonight I'm going to focus in on LinkedIn Sales Solutions. So we're going to talk about that business unit. I'm going to show you the strategy and some of our campaigns from that specific unit. The product, by the way, is called Sales Navigator. I might throw out that word as we move on. So that's a little bit about kind of LinkedIn generally and a little bit about me. To get in kind of to the main part of the presentation, I guess now. From a brand strategy perspective, when you think about brand architecture, so if you're a company and you own multiple brands, one of the key decisions that you have to make are, how are we going to organize those brands? So there are 3 main approaches to doing that, I guess you could call them. On the right-hand side is what's known as a house of brand strategy. So that's Procter & Gamble or Unilever would be good examples of those, where they've dozens of these different brands. Most people don't even know they're the same company. So it's all these different brands in different categories, all the same company, but nothing really closely associated with that master brand of Unilever. The opposite extreme to that, on the other side, is a branded house strategy. So that's somebody like GE or Virgin or FedEx, where they operate all these different brands, but it's a very close association. You know, it's Virgin TV or it's Virgin Airlines, a really close association with that master brand. And then you've got some companies that operate somewhere in the middle. Apple, you might argue, is one of those. Microsoft certainly is, where you've kind of, it looks like they're doing this strategy. So it looks like they're a branded house where they're kind of saying Microsoft Word, Microsoft PowerPoint, Microsoft Excel, but also they own Bing and they own Xbox and they own other companies that aren't so closely associated with the master brand. So LinkedIn, one of the kind of decisions I guess we had to make about a year and a half ago was, well, where do we fall into that? Do we want to go off and create these completely separate kind of brand identities, or do we want to really closely associate ourselves with the master brand, or is it somewhere in the middle? And the answer is, as you can see, we're a branded house. So we really benefit closely from that association with LinkedIn. So everything we do has to look and feel like LinkedIn, even though we're kind of separate business units as such. If you look at the audience that we have, so as LinkedIn Sales Solutions, we've one primary target audience, and that's sales professionals. The product that we sell is for sales professionals. Like I said, it's called LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So from a brand perspective, how do we position that? What's our brand positioning when it comes to Sales Navigator? Traditionally, salespeople had two tabs open on their desktop every day. So they'd come in every day, they might have their phone on their desk, they turn on the computer, they'd have their email, so they'd have Outlook or Gmail or whatever they're using, and they'd have a CRM system, whether that's Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics or whatever it is. Then a few years ago, LinkedIn became kind of the third tab. And that's where we position Sales Navigator. So you've got your system of communication in email, you've got your system of record, now you've also got a system of engagement. So that's how we position LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So yes, you need to communicate with your prospects. Yes, you need to record everything that you're doing, but how do you actually engage with them? So how do you know who to engage with? How do you know the best way into that particular company? How do you know the right time to reach out? It's all of those real-time insights that LinkedIn Sales Navigator does. Now, I don't need to get into the product tonight, but just to give you a sense of what we're trying to do and the some of the campaigns that you're going to see kind of later on. So that's it from a brand strategy and a brand positioning perspective. One more tool that we use, I guess, in LinkedIn when it comes to brand is what's called a brand key. I think that was developed by Unilever originally. But it's essentially when you answer all of these questions of your brand. So who are we? Why are we here? What do we offer? What's our big defining idea? And who are we for? Every one of our campaigns, every single brand campaign we ever do will answer at least one of those questions. Sometimes it'll answer multiple questions. But if we're running a campaign, we're activating on at least one of those. And that's why I wanted to show you a second campaign tonight, two campaigns, so you can see how we're activating on different parts of this brand key, as we call it. So you've got the brand key, which is kind of outlining, okay, here's the rationale for why you're doing certain campaigns. But the context a year and a half ago as well was the following. We had two big challenges to overcome. We'd never done brand marketing before within B2B, and it's still quite unusual. Not a lot of companies do brand marketing at a B2B level. They tend to start a little bit lower down in the funnel, do kind of lead generation or demand generation campaigns. The brand stuff is usually left to kind of B2C companies for the most part. But what we realized is our unaided brand awareness wasn't where we wanted it to be. Who knows what unaided brand awareness is, or whose company measures unaided brand awareness? Couple. That's usually the response that you get. Most companies measure awareness. Certainly, many of the larger companies measure awareness. And awareness is kind of as it sounds. If you're talking about the soft drink industry, you ask somebody, have you heard of Coca-Cola? Yes, I have. Have you heard of 7-Up? Yes, I have. Have you heard of Fanta? Yes, I have. So they're aware. Unaided brand awareness is about recall. So you don't actually prompt anybody. You say, name the soft drinks that come to your mind. And whichever ones that are kind of top of mind, that's what we're talking about when it comes to unaided brand awareness. So a lot of companies don't take that extra step. They just kind of say, okay, our awareness levels are great. That's what we were doing kind of a year and a half ago as well. So we were looking at our awareness levels and we're like, we're up at 90-something%. This is amazing. When you get to the unaided level, that's when things start to fall. And it's really important to address this issue because if your unaided awareness is not good, that means Recall will be really low, which means you won't be in their consideration set, which means when they go to purchase, you won't be there. The second big challenge that we faced was when we did an audit, I guess, of all of the campaigns that were going out there, we noticed there was very minimal cohesion between anything that we were doing. So we were telling different stories. They were designed very differently. The copy was quite cold. It was very, very functional messaging. So in other words, showing a photo of the product and kind of saying, this is what you get out of the product. So really, really functional. What we wanted to do was move to a more human level. We wanted to humanize what we did and take the conversation from something which is very functional to a little bit more emotive, in short. Before I even show you what we did, two quick external examples of what I'm kind of talking about here when I talk about humanizing the brand. This is just a piece of copy change that I want to talk about. If you look on the left-hand side, this was Airbnb a couple of years ago. Find a place to stay and the search box. So very much like any booking site that you would, whether it's booking.com or hotels.com or any of those, it's the same kind of thing. Book your hotel now. Very functional messaging. You notice where they've gone to as they rebranded. Now the message is welcome home. And it's just it's the subtle difference in tone and the subtle difference in the copy being used that just takes you from a very functional place to a little bit more emotive. The second part of that around the cohesion, I think Spotify is a great example because I'm not talking about consistency necessarily. Consistency is more about being the same. We don't want to be the same, and Spotify here isn't the same. They still have individual artistic expression with David Bowie and stuff like that, but you can see that it's all part of the same brand. You can see the cohesion that's in there. And that's how you build trust over time. They say consistency is trust over time. That's how you start to build trust and you start to become more human. So that's kind of the context for the campaigns that I'm about to show you. That's kind of where we were a year and a half ago. We knew we had this challenge to overcome in terms of how we were seen a little bit like a cold brand. We were described in one of the focus groups as, you're like an invisible blue man to me. So you're a little bit stuffy, a little bit too professional, a little bit faceless. So that's what we were trying to overcome, as well as addressing the unaided awareness issue for the actual product, which was Sales Navigator. So the very first campaign, the very first B2B brand campaign we ever launched was Get Closer to the Right People. I launched this time last year in November. It was a campaign that I led myself. And the objective was to create an integrated, so a global integrated campaign to increase unaided brand awareness, interest, and engagement among our target audience of sales professionals. So that's the objective of the campaign. This is kind of how we went about it. And before we even get on to that, the brand key that I mentioned before, if you look at the brand key and you think about this campaign, it's what we offer. It's this question that we're answering with this campaign. So we're not really addressing the why we're here. We're not talking about our big defining idea. We're very much getting into what do we offer. So here's our product, and we're going to talk about it. So the idea, the insight, I guess, that drove the campaign, when we looked at everything that Sales Navigator does, and that's kind of 6 or 7 pages of features and benefits, when we look at it, exactly what it is, the insight that we came up with was actually, it's about getting closer to the right people. Whether it's, whether you're trying to reach out to prospects for the first time, or whether you're trying to kind of maintain relationships with customers, whatever it is that you're trying to do, it's about getting closer to the right people. So what we decided to do, and again, thinking back to humanizing the brand as well, we said instead of just, again, showing some more images of our product, we're going to get real people, real LinkedIn members who are buyers. So the type of people that our audience of sales professionals would be reaching out to. So we brought them into a studio in London, 12 different LinkedIn members, and we kind of took some great photographs, some great video. And the idea is quite literally, we're going to get closer to you. So the images that you see here, there's one main focal point for the most part in each image, whether it's an eye or a hand or a nose, whatever it is. So we literally kind of zoomed in on those. Some of the interesting things, what we do, by the way, before we move to the final kind of creative, is we mock up something of what we kind of have in mind, and then we take it to a focus group. So we do some market research. So when we did that market research, we got a lot of great stuff out of it. Generally speaking, people found it striking and unique. So when placed against other B2B campaigns, it was like, yes, this would definitely stand out and kind of grab my attention compared to those. Some things that we didn't even intend came out, like a lot of sales professionals called out the fact that sales is a black and white business. So they were like, in sales, it's either you hit your quota or you don't. So they liked that the imagery was black and white, which again wasn't even something that we had kind of, set out to do as such. But once we have that initial creative mocked up and we bring it to a focus group and we get their kind of we get the feedback from those, we then refine the creative, and then this is what the audio was going to play there. This is what the final kind of creative looks like. So you see like the video on the right hand side, some of the social images here, and the copy is so you've got a buyer. This is a photograph of a buyer who our audience will be trying to reach. So it's meet Peter, executive IT director. Your colleague's intro secures a meeting. So it's showing you one of the benefits of the product. And then it's get closer to the right people, LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So that's what some of the kind of final creative look like. On the media side of things, we approached this campaign over 18 months. We knew it was going to be an 18-month campaign, at least to kick off with. We decided we'd put it into 5 different phases or 5 different flights of kind of 2-3 months each with a break in between. The campaign for the most part was digital. So when you've got a really highly targeted group of people that you want to reach, which we did with sales professionals, digital obviously makes a lot of sense. So we used our own platform. So we used LinkedIn a lot. We used some other social media channels like Facebook, and we also went much further than that, and we kind of were buying leads from Teads and some others. But about 10 to 15% of the campaign, and this is where it gets kind of quite unusual for B2B, about 10 to 15% of the campaign was non-digital elements. So we had major podcast sponsorship of some of the biggest kind of news programs or news podcasts in the world. We also did out of home, so we did billboards. But there was a media principle that was guiding us throughout any of this stuff, which was that we wanted to pick our moments. So we weren't going to do a big mass buy of billboards everywhere in the world at the one time. We wanted to look at individual kind of moments in culture when we would be a little bit more relevant to our audience. So this being a perfect example, this is live right now. So if you go to San Francisco right now, you'll see these up. But the idea is the idea that for this one in particular is Dreamforce is an event that happens every year in San Francisco. So Salesforce hosts this annual event for sales professionals every September. And 180,000 sales professionals, so 180,000 of our target audience, all descend into San Francisco for a week and a half. So that's a moment that we would choose. So between the airport, where they're all kind of landing, and the actual event center, the Moscone Center, we had dozens of placements between that area. So that's how we're taking something which is quite B2C, generally speaking, and bringing it into a B2B world. We're just picking our moments really well. Another example of that was, this is about 2 months back, I'd say, the Times in the UK, they've got a 1.5 million readership. They were doing a full pull-out dedicated to sales professionals. So that's something that we'll sponsor. So we had kind of advertorial, we had the back page of that fully sponsored and the front page there as well. When you're doing something like out of home where you've only got 5 or 6 seconds to communicate your message, that's where we just had get closer to the right people and the logo and kind of know what they're messaging. When it comes to digital, you have a little bit more time to communicate your message. So that's when we started trying to communicate some of the benefits when it comes to digital. So we were trying to optimize based on the channel as well, which is kind of really important. What we decided to do as well really recently is we had started off this campaign as being a brand awareness campaign, so very, very, very top of the funnel. But then the question came, well, what happens after that? So they visit the page, they leave the page, we retarget them, but then what do we do? So what we've done actually really recently is we've brought out a series of ebooks. So we developed a content series with the aim of bringing people further down the funnel. So we've captured their attention, but now how do we bring them more towards the mid and bottom of the funnel? So Sales Navigator, the value proposition of Sales Navigator is about getting closer to your prospects, getting closer to your customers, and getting closer to your own team. And that's what we decided to do with the content series. So we've an ebook dedicated to each of those, and the last one just came out about 2 weeks ago. Not forgetting about an audience that a lot of people forget about when it comes to their, big campaigns. There's tens of thousands of people that work in LinkedIn who each have hundreds of connections. So we always make sure to include that audience, our internal audience, as part of any major campaign that we do. So we've got it down to an art now, I would say, where we kind of have some of the core elements that we'll always be in, where we'll kind of go, okay, there's this newsletter going out, there's these screens that are available around the office, in San Francisco this time, we've got the whole exterior of the building wrapped. So we've got these kind of core elements that we make sure we include on every campaign launch. And then we do individual things as well. So you see here on the floor outside some of the lifts in the San Francisco office. What else have we got? Some of the ebooks that we had displayed. That's the Dublin office on top. And all the screens around the office, some of our ads are playing. So the reach we were able to get just from our employees alone was incredible. Yet again, most people forget about this audience when they're launching campaigns. So going back to that brand key, that's a global brand awareness campaign that we launched last November. It's still live now, and it'll still be live until July at least next year. But it's very much focused on obviously the earlier pieces I mentioned as well around addressing the unaided brand awareness and humanizing the brand. But also it's ticking this question. It's the what do we offer question. What I'll briefly just show you now is the second campaign that I also launched maybe 8-9 months ago. But it addresses another part of this brand key. So this campaign is called the Real Faces of Sales. Totally different type of campaign to get closer to the right people. In general, in brand marketing, you kind of have either a brand awareness campaign, so people who don't know you, making them aware of you, or a brand perception campaign, so changing how they perceive you. So they're kind of the two basic approaches. The first campaign I showed you was an awareness campaign. This campaign is more the brand perception type. And if I bring up the brand key again, it's these three, particularly the why are we here. So we have a vision within LinkedIn Sales Solutions to elevate the sales profession. That's this kind of lofty vision that we created a few years ago. The why are we here part is really important, and it's one of the main drivers, I guess, of this campaign. So the context, I guess, for this, if you ask a lot of people what they think of sales professionals, a lot of the time it's very unflattering what they say. So it's, they get the image of that kind of used car salesman. It's kind of, okay, they're cheesy and they're dishonest and so forth, which is not reflective of what we know. It's not reflective of modern sales professionals. So we wanted to address that in this campaign and specifically call it out. The objective that we had was to elevate the sales profession by showing that sales has changed, but that perceptions of salespeople have yet to shift in line with reality. And we kept talking about this just in our internal meetings. We kept talking about we want to change the face of sales. We kept using this word face or faces. And that kind of was a reoccurring theme that we went back to, because we kind of said, actually, when you think about it, if you go to Google or you go to any of these image libraries that a lot of sales and marketing professionals use, and you Google salesperson, it's these images that come up. Have I got them there? Yes, I do. These are the type of images that you see. So we thought that was a really kind of cool starting point. This is a jump-off point almost creatively. We kind of said, well, imagine if we could change that. Imagine now in a few years' time if you Google salesperson, or you went to an image library and you put in sales professional, and it wasn't this that came back, but it was more something like this. It was the reality of what modern sales professionals are and what they look like. So that's the idea behind the campaign. We went and we found real sales professionals, and we followed them around for a day. They knew we were following them around. We asked first. But yeah, we followed them as they went about their daily lives. So as they kind of worked from home, or as they went to a cafe to have meetings, or as they went back to the office, whatever it was that they were doing on a normal day, we followed them, because we wanted to show what the reality was as opposed to the perception out there. So the main part of the campaign was kind of twofold. One was a master video, which kind of showed these stories. And the second was we would actually photograph them also. And again, they knew about this. We would photograph them also as they were going about their daily lives. And we would create this stock library. So all of a sudden we had hundreds of images of real sales professionals really going about their daily job, which we then uploaded to all of the major stock libraries. So the idea is, right now, if you go to a lot of the stock libraries and you Google sales professional, it's our images that are coming up. And hopefully as we continue this campaign, because we're only just getting started with it, eventually that will hit Google as well and the other major search engines. So we will quite literally change the face of sales. I'm going to show you the video that we produced now as well. So we went to San Francisco and like I said, we followed around some sales professionals. This is the master video, which will give you a sense of the campaign, I think.
Cheesy.
Intrusive.
Pushy. Dishonest.
They're all slick,
There's some guy in a suit,
all buttoned up.
somebody who's selling you something you don't need.
I'm hoping it's changing. I'd say over the course of the last 5 years, a number of people in this profession are trying to elevate it because salespeople are professionals.
Scene 4, take one marker.
But I think this kind of project can change the perception of sales. It can really show that the best salespeople aren't people who are trying to push something down your throat.
Should I be looking at the camera or should I look? We go out of our way to make sure that we create these bonds with our customers, just creating real relationships.
You can't make a sale without your team. We're the front lines, we're setting up the meetings, but we rely on our team, our account executives, to go ahead and convert those meetings into sales.
Everyone sells. If you're a doctor, if you're a lawyer, every day you're selling what it is that you do. And it's about relationships and it's about human connection.
I think sales at the end of the day is about solving problems. It's about being compassionate. It's about listening and empathizing.
To sort of change the face of sales, maybe stop looking for the same thing. And so I think we all just need to have a little bit of a different lens when we look at salespeople.
So that's what we did. We put that video out, like I said, maybe 8 or 9 months ago. We're developing a phase 2 right now, which hopefully will go live around January next year. We got some incredible results really quickly. We actually didn't put a massive amount of media spend behind it, but we got amazing results. So within the first few weeks, there was already 150,000 views on the video. The image views and downloads blew us away as well because we didn't actually promote those at all. You had to actually go to a stock library and find them. It wasn't something that we put any media spend behind whatsoever. But to date, they've been already downloaded 50,000 times. What's amazing about this campaign for me is every week, I'd say not a week has gone by in the last 9 months that somebody doesn't spot the images somewhere and send them on to me. So they achieved their objective in terms of all of a sudden they were being used in B2B sales campaigns. So whether it was the homepage of Fast Company or whether it's smaller companies and articles that you've kind of, companies that you might not have heard of, but, produce a lot of sales content, our images were kind of showing up everywhere. The latest one I got was actually a few weeks ago, the Irish Independent. Now, not the reason that we produced the images. 6 signs you're in the wrong job. But obviously that was the point of the campaign, was not to control the images. It was actually just to get them into the wild so people can use them kind of how they want. And nobody actually even knows, unless you've seen the video and you've seen the context, nobody even knows that it's LinkedIn that have produced these images. But yeah, that was the latest one that was sent to me September 25th from the Irish Independent. So these are popping up everywhere all over the world. They're on the homepage of Box.com, Airbnb, everywhere. So that's kind of that's the second campaign that I plan to show you tonight. So hopefully you can kind of see the difference between when you're doing an awareness campaign and when you're doing a perception campaign, and also when you're trying to answer different questions. So when you're trying to answer the what do we offer question versus the why are we here question. Probably when it comes to the campaigns, the question I get asked most internally, I would say, is how do you measure that? Because especially in LinkedIn, all of the marketing that we'd done, as I mentioned until recently, was more lead generation type campaigns. So, you're putting this many dollars in, you're bringing this many leads in, and of those, this many are converting into closed bookings. That's not what the brand campaigns are about. So it took a little bit of hand-holding as such, and stakeholder management to get over that. But we did develop a system, I would say, which works well for us. And again, this is relatively all brand new within LinkedIn, but this is how we measure brand campaigns, essentially. 3 elements to it. Number 1, we have an annual brand tracker. So every year we go out and we literally perform this study. So we kind of say, what's the awareness level? What are the awareness levels at? What are the unaided awareness levels at? Right down the funnel. And it answers all of these questions around how how many people are aware of us and how they perceive us, etc. So that's not tied to any campaign. That's just a date in the calendar. Every year we go out and we see this. And over the course of time, you hopefully will see the needle move in terms of unaided awareness. That's the idea. The second one that we do is actually directly tied to each campaign. So we perform an ad effectiveness study. So we work with a third-party company called Interpret. And essentially what they do is they've got a control group that they absolutely know have not seen the campaign. They've got a group that they tag that they know have seen the campaign, and then you look at the differences between those two. So even if you're not moving the needle on a global scale, at least you know those that have been exposed to the ads they've had an impact on that audience. And then the third is the one that you'll be most familiar with, which is your kind of standard campaign metrics. So, views, engagement, click-through rates, all of that kind of thing. So it's these combination of measurement techniques, I guess, that enables us to evaluate how successful particular brand campaigns have been. So that's pretty much it from me, I think. I'm going to be staying around for after the presentation. So if you want to come up to me and have a chat or ask any questions, or indeed now, I think we're going to open the floor. Katie, are we? Yep.
Yeah. Anyone has any questions?
If anyone has any more questions, feel free.
Thanks. Great presentation. Thank you very much.
Hi, no problem.
Hopefully this is not off topic too much, but the insight piece seems to be really important to LinkedIn strategy. The
which piece, sorry?
Insights.
Insights.
And collecting insights.
Yep.
and signals. And in a sales navigator context, LinkedIn would be the primary data source for those insights.
Yep.
And as things are evolving in the marketplace and the ecosystem, there are a lot of other data sources out there, and even with the consumer type data sources, Facebook and Twitter, they're becoming more relevant in a B2B context. I'm just wondering how LinkedIn is dealing with that, and is there a strategy around that for you guys?
There's not actually a specific strategy to deal with those kind of competitors like Facebook moving into the B2B space. They've kind of been talking about it for a long time, but we haven't really seen it impact our strategy at all. And we would monitor our competitors quite closely. So the brand tracker that I talked about a few minutes ago, we're quite aware of what our competitors are doing and what kind of slice of the marketplace they have, I guess. But from an LMS, from a LinkedIn marketing solutions perspective, Facebook are much more on our radar. So when it comes to marketing professionals putting budget towards marketing spend, Facebook are absolutely on the radar. But on the sales solution side, they're not really there at all.
Do you see B2B brands going for kind of B2C marketing approach more often? And also, how did you actually get buy-in for it as well?
Yeah, great question. I think you're starting to see it more and more now. I think B2B marketing has never been in a better place. The creativity. I was at an awards, a marketing awards ceremony a couple of weeks ago in London, and some of the B2B work that's coming out now is the most creative I've ever seen. But I think it actually just speaks to a wider trend within marketing where things kind of come full circle all the time. So it's like the whole, email comes out and all of a sudden, direct mail goes away. People are finding email is much more effective. And then everybody's sending emails. So then email open rates plummet. And now you're starting to see direct mail again. So you're starting to see B2B companies use direct mail. You're starting to see them sponsor podcasts. So doing all this kind of offline stuff that they never traditionally would have done. Having said all of that, it absolutely was very difficult to get buy-in because the word waste kept coming up when it came to the offline elements. So it was like, okay, great, you're able to target your sales professionals, but what about all those other people that are seeing your ad that aren't your target market? So that's where we were really kind of we really refined our media approach, I guess, and tried to communicate that. We had a few principles that we adhere to. I mentioned one of them earlier of picking our moments. We're very, very strict around that. That if we're doing a print media buy, if we're doing a DM, run, if we're doing an out-of-home buy, whatever it is, that we're very, very targeted, even still, as much as you can be. And what that's leading to now as well is because we're one of the few B2B companies that are doing that type of marketing, we're being noticed even more so than we would have been otherwise. So you're getting people will take photographs of it on social media and they'll share and do those kind of things. As more and more B2B companies start to do this stuff, maybe that won't happen for us down the line. So I think we're one of the first companies to really kind of push it to that level. But yeah, I think it speaks to a wider trend of old things coming back now. That's happening a lot. But generally B2B is getting much more creative as well, I would say.
Hi. Sorry. I'm a Sales Navigator user as well.
Oh, great.
And I would use Marketing Solutions products as well. My question is that Sales Navigator is very much a separate entity. Is there any plans to integrate it in with the standard products then as well?
That's a great question. And yes, absolutely there is. So there's already a certain integration there, but it's we're talking about different ways to do it. It's a conversation I'm not directly involved in, so I'm not 100% sure where that is now, but I do know the plan is to come out with an integrated solution really, really soon. It's one of those things that's quite funny because sales and marketing people or professionals see the world just kind of differently. You know, in terms of how we target people, we use different language. You know, we go by lists or whatever it is, and sales professionals look at their CRM and stuff like that. So it's not the same people being targeted all the time. So that's why we I guess see an opportunity there, because we're kind of saying, imagine if you as a marketing professional were targeting the exact same people that sales professionals were targeting. Literally the same people. That's something that kind of doesn't exist at the moment, certainly not at the level that we would be able to do that. So it's a huge opportunity for us, and yeah, you'll see something coming really soon.
Hi, sorry, I have a cold, so excuse me.
No worries. I do as well, Alex.
The sexy voice. I see a lot in B2B sales that it's really not the salesperson that you target. Okay, so it's a group of people. It's a buying committee.
Yep.
Okay, and they are not going to have sales in their title. So depending on the sector, it could be a lab technician who's the inner champion that goes up the ladder for the sale to happen. It could be in technical, it could be sysadmin that is putting pressure on their CEO or CFO or whatever to buy something. So how are you going to adapt to that changing
It's a great question. I've so many different ways to answer that, because our audience are also sales professionals. So we're also looking at that from a product perspective. So one of the big selling points of Sales Navigator is that it gets you closer to those different people in the buying committee. So if you've got the sales director, but also the IT guy, and also the finance guy, and also the procurement guy, whatever, involved in that decision-making process, Sales Navigator helps you get closer to those people. So one of the ways that we're evolving the campaign, as an example, for the next phase, is we're showing that full buying committee. So you might have noticed in the images that you saw up to now, it was only one buyer that we showed the whole time. In the next iteration of the campaign, you're going to see 5 or 6 buyers in that. So from that side of things, Sales Navigator really helps you get closer to the buying committee, and we're going to communicate that in our marketing campaigns. From the other question that you had in terms of how we target those, I would say we're getting better at it. So when I say the sales professionals are our audience, I mean they're our primary audience. So they're not the exclusive audience that we target, but that's where we put the vast majority of our budget. We're getting better at mapping out who else we need to target as well. But what we find is, even though there's a buying committee maybe involved, the sales director or the sales manager is usually the decision maker. So we know we absolutely have to get those. I suppose it depends on the company, but they're our primary audience, so we absolutely have to. You know what? Even if they're not the final decision maker, it's still them that are going to be selling the concept more likely to the other people in the room. So we view them as our primary audience that we absolutely have to reach, and then we're trying to refine our approach so we get better at those secondary audiences as well. All right, thanks guys. Cheers.
Guys, thanks so much for your time and attention. I hope everybody got a chance to enter our raffle as they came in. So whoever wins is going to get a copy of Building a Brand Story by Donald Miller, and they're also going to get a year's custom plan for Rebrandly. So best of luck. Ruth Buckley. Is she still here? Woo! Congratulations.
I'll give it to you after. You don't have to come up. Unless you want to give a speech now. And on the topic of speeches, guys, we have our next meetup set. It's for January 17th, so it's still a little bit of time away after all the Christmas and the craziness. And we are going to hear from Ed Giansante. He is the global community manager at Dropbox, and he's got a really interesting topic about how to turn your customers into brand advocates. So I hope you guys will join us the next time. Thank you so much. Okay, we'll see you again.